schedule. I don't care. Either one. I don't care. I really don't. Yeah. Charlie's having issues. Thank you. Okay, I got them more water too. Thank you. 7, 8.
Somewhere in the middle I live in a productive white neighborhood.
Hello, everyone. This is breakout room number 3. I am Cheryl Rapp, and I'm going to be the scribe, and I'm just going to be keeping your mics muted for a couple minutes so that. Oh, can you guys hear that? Hold on. So, if can you guys hear the Kathy as well, or are you just hearing me? Just me. Okay, perfect. I have an echo. So sorry. I'm going to be introducing Kimani right now to kind of kick everybody off and let you guys know what our two questions are.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this breakout session. We have about 20 minutes to go through the two questions that we have. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to break out the questions. So the first 10 minutes, we'll discuss the first question. And then the remaining 10 minutes will basically cover the second question. So the first question is, based on the first three meetings and your background, what do you believe to be the problems or issues related to student debt that require change? You can use the chat to respond to that question, or if you decide that you want to speak freely, you can also do that. It's enough of us in here that it won't cause a disruption. So feel free to respond to that question. So based on the first three meetings and your background, what do you believe to be the problems or issues related to student debt that require change?
Rebecca Larson from Wakefield. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, hi, Rebecca. We can hear you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I just wanted to comment that, the presentations have been extremely interesting and there's been a lot of great information shared. One thing that I consistently hear from our financial aid director students
Okay, I'm gonna have to.
is just the confusion among the different options that they have. And, you can give students so much information, but there's only so much that they can digest at once in the process. So having someone help them work through those questions and provide in a more targeted way seems like a good option going forward. So I just wanted to share that just as an initial reaction.
Choose.
Sorry, Kimani, I had you muted. Can you repeat?
So in consideration of all of that, are there other things in the sense that you feel that stand out as far as those issues or those problems that's out there in relation to the whole student debt conversation that we could, in a sense, address that's going to require some of that change? Are there other thoughts, feedback, adding on to even the comments that Rebecca provided to us?
If there's a way that we can track it, and I think there is in Procare.
Because I usually go in Procare and get, from when they sign in and out. Yeah,
Let me interject one. If you're not speaking, just mute your mic because we're getting other conversations, and it's hard for us to capture as far as the commentary that's coming through. All right, so I know we had some conversation or discussion that was going on. Can you repeat that just to make sure that we capture it? And if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Something's going on with the mute and unmute. So everyone should be unmuted right now.
All right, so I know I can see everyone's face except for Marisha. If you want to speak, feel free to raise your hand. I can see you and I can call on you. All right, so we got Paul wants to speak. So let's go ahead and have Paul provide some insight there.
Thank you. I thought we were just going to establish the order, so I didn't know I'd be the only hand that went up. Anyway, I think the meetings and presentations have been outstanding. That was my survey response. I really feel like we're receiving a really great survey of the issues. And in particular, I think it's been very effective to hear from student borrowers too, along the way, to hear what their journey has been and what they've encountered. From my own perspective, as I've been synthesizing the meetings, I think some of the issues that for me stand out and the problems are a difficulty in access for students obtaining grant monies that they are eligible for. And we've talked about the difficulty and the burden of the FAFSA process. And particularly, I was troubled by the fact that we heard that people of color aren't always the first to apply, and that, you know, at the end of the line, the state funding is often already allocated out. I also thought too that another issue to me is just looking at the overshifted amount of student living expenses that are represented in student debt. Again, I don't have solutions for these. I'm just saying, when I looked at what we've looked at, the proportion of the total cost of attendance that's living expenses, to me, is really a challenge when you look at what that results in terms of debt overall. And I think too, another thing that stood out is the amount of debt outstanding that's attributed to student journeys that didn't result in completion, and as a result didn't lead to higher employment income. Without the income boost from attending higher ed, it's very difficult to afford the payments. And I was really struck me how much of the outstanding debt burden are smaller loan amounts that are significantly delinquent and very likely related to folks that began an educational journey but either didn't get the resources they needed to be successful, or had encountered challenges along the way, financial or otherwise, and weren't able to continue on in the educational journey. And then the last thing I've noted is, in the data we've been presented, the fact that attendance and the debt associated with attendance at for-profit schools is overshifted. And again, I don't know what to do about that, but students that attended for-profit schools ended up with higher amounts of debt overall and more chronically troubled debt. And that's an issue too that to me is something for us to discuss. Thanks for the chance to.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Paul. Are there other things that are covered? There's a lot that Paul shared there. Are there other things in the sense that we might have missed as far as what some of those issues are in relation to student debt and things that we should be considering as we're moving forward?
So this is Alex. Can everybody hear me okay? Full disclosure, my daughter has been in all my meetings this past week, so she may come back in here, and if so, she will give you her 2 cents as well. So I think that for me, in response to the question that's being asked of us, when it comes to the problems and issues related to student debt that require change, it's the fact that these issues are so heavily rooted in the system that has been set up. And if we don't start addressing these inequities that exist, and especially during the events of last week, over the weekend, this past week, in addition to decades, centuries of murders, tragedies, injustices, where people have not. I know I don't have a cookie either, honey, but we'll get some in a little bit, okay? Go ask Daddy. Everybody needs to take a cookie break. But tying back to that, we have to call out the systemic racism when it comes to the fact that people, and also the people in the systems that continue to uphold it. I asked a question earlier that wasn't asked to Senator Baldwin in relationship to the fact that last week you didn't have the media coverage related to the veto that Trump had used another exertion of force and power to shoot down. Sorry, maybe wrong choice of words, but I'm really not focused on that right now. The fact that there was another opportunity to be able to help some individuals get a leg up, to have some forgiveness. when it comes to their student loans. I am going to be very frustrated if this task force does not address these racial inequities and we have that conversation related to the systemic system that has continued to cause certain groups of people, specifically Black, Brown, other marginalized, other groups, to not be able to access resources or to be given the resources so that they can best thrive. That is both the personal as well as um, the the background that I'm going to bring when it comes to the reducing and eliminating those socioeconomic and racial disparities. And I am going to continue to challenge this group to keep that top of mind when people say, well, I don't have the solutions. Well, we do have some solutions. Things that some people can do can actually be use your voice to say, this is not right, and I'm going to be a part of the solution. This is what we are going to do. We're going to continue to talk about it. And we're going to make sure that our legislators, that people who are in the systems of power say enough is enough. It's got to change.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So I think we want to switch to that to the second question to talk about what are some of those things in the sense that we, as a task force, or what do you believe basically that the task force can identify solutions for? And I think we're starting to cross over into it. But we really want to capture those. And I know that there might still be some of those other problems or issues related to student debt that we still want to get out there. So if you still have those, feel free to put them in the chat so we can capture them. But as we even think about what some of those problems or those issues are, the whole lack of financial literacy in basically for those that basically receive debt or take out student debt. But what are some of the things that the task force itself, as far as thinking about our charge, what can we identify those solutions for? There's a myriad of things in the sense that we have proposed here, but where are some of those ideas in the sense that you think that we can actually tackle in order to move forward with the task force? We got about 5 minutes left, so I want to try to capture some of that real quick. Paul.
Well, I would just like to support what Alex said. I think if you look at the list of issues that I brought up, almost every one of them, maybe all of them, have racism and challenges built into them. And the problems are much deeper here than interest rates and increase in tuition levels over time. They go to much more fundamental issues. Why is the dropout rate so high? Why don't people of color get access to the grants that they're entitled to? I feel like we really have to roll up our sleeves and go beyond the superficial level to figure out what can we do to substantially change these outcomes. Why do people of color move towards for-profit schools where the outcomes are worse? Well, there are fewer barriers. I mean, you can. So why can't we figure out how to reduce barriers to more affordable educational paths? I just feel like I felt like in the meetings we've had so far, I've got more and more sense of how deep the issues are and how much it's going to take to take them on. I think we need to do it. I think we should. Alex's charge to us is a good one. I think we need to take it on as a group.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Rebecca, did I see that you had some feedback as well?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that's been said, and really needing to target those issues and focus on that as a priority. And one just tangible thing that, for our organization, I'm with the private nonprofit colleges and universities, and we always support student financial aid as our first priority and Wisconsin grants, and it has been making up a smaller and smaller portion of student support. So, one thing that's been talked about is promise programs. And a
Mhm.
lot of our institutions have promise programs as well, but they're targeted at first generation, targeted at low income and underrepresented populations. So if we, talk about that, Wisconsin Grant in particular is targeted at those students that really need the resources. And so when I think we talk about programs to support students, we need to focus on really targeting who needs those resources the most.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So we need to transition back to the main room. So we'll give you maybe a minute or so, just if you have feedback to put it in the chat real quick. And then we need to transition back over to the main room, and then we'll end up reporting out as far as what we discussed on today.
And I'll be adding the link to the main room so you guys can just click on that as well.
Thank you all for your feedback and your commentary. That's very, very helpful. I think it's going to help us all in sense to have a meaningful conversation.
Thanks for guiding it.
Thank you, everybody.
Biden has